Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Cooperstown, New York, which is dubbed as America's greatest small town, or at least that's what they call themselves. But behind me is the biggest and greatest baseball shrine here in the United States, and maybe the world. The Cooperstown National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. I'm going to go ahead and take you inside. Unfortunately, there's hardly any markers outside, but there is one just outside the building, and it doesn't really say very much. But I'll go ahead and show you around this town and around the museum, and there's lots to see, so come with me. So the Baseball Hall of Fame was established in 1939 by one of the heirs to the Singer sewing machine fortune. His name was Stephen Carlton Clark, who sought to bring tourists to a city hurt by the Great Depression, and of course that destroyed a lot of local tourism, because a lot of people come here just to go to the Oswego Lake, which is like 2 blocks from here. But it pretty much also demonstrated the whole hops industry, and speaking of which, there are a lot of breweries here in this town. But Clark constructed the Hall of Fame's building, and it was dedicated on June 12th, 1939. In fact, his granddaughter, Jane Forbes Clark, is the current chairman of the board of directors. And a lot of people may question why this is even here, but there's the dubious claim that the first real baseball game, or first professional baseball game, was played here at Doubleday Field, which I'm going to do in another video coming up. But either way, I mean, baseball fans make the trek all the way here to the small town in Cooperstown, New York, which, by the way, I mean, the drive here is really great, but either way, there is no fast way of getting here. But allow yourself plenty of time. All right, now I'm going to jump across the street. So I'm going to take you to the left side of the building, and this is what I find really cool. Today is June 12th of 2023, but this is a baseball scoreboard, and these are all the June 11th game results from yesterday. And unfortunately, my St. Louis Cardinals, my home team and my all-time favorite team, is in last place at the moment. Yeah, you see that? Shame, shame. But I'm still a fan either way. I love you all. But they did lose to the Cincinnati Reds yesterday, as it says right there, 4-3. But this is really cool. I mean, most baseball stadiums have these anyway, if you walk around a little bit inside your local stadium. And just to the left of the museum that's not the entrance or exit, by the way, but here's a plaque that says here, site of the first National Baseball Hall of Fame induction happened on June 12th, which, by the way, is today, 1939. And I mean, yeah, it's not 1939, but it was, let's see, it was something years ago. But it was attended by Grover Alexander, Ty Cobb, Eddie Collins, Walter Johnson, Nap LaHoy, Connie Mack, Babe Ruth, George Sisler, Tris Speaker, Honus Wagner, and Cy Young. Now, also being inducted was Christy Mathewson, but he passed away a few years after he retired. But he was one of the best baseball pitchers of all time, and of course it was before the days of video and all that. But he is definitely, I'll show you the area where the first timers are enshrined later in this video. And this is definitely the entrance. It's best to buy your tickets online, and of course a lot of people love to take pictures. I am one of those people today. And it does say the future inductees of this year. That is Scott Rolen, or as St. Louisans call him, Scotty Rolen. He helped us win the 2006 World Series. And then that is Fred McGriff, who is also going to be inducted July 21st and 24th of this year. Alright, so here's the second floor. There's an art gallery on the left, and then through there it talks about the history of America's greatest pastime.
I did not take any video on the second floor since there were a lot of people at the time, but I took several photos. These are basically sections about different periods and eras in baseball, going back to the very beginning. Also, baseball in different countries, and a special section on women in baseball, the Negro Leagues, plus a big area on one of the game's all-time popular players, Babe Ruth.
All right, this is the 3rd floor, and this is as high as you can get. But they do have some cool exhibits here, like they got the baseball card one, and they got a Hank gallery, the gallery of records. And it doesn't just spotlight him, it also talks about those who have beaten, broken, and record holders of all around. Not just players, but umpires and blah, 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 blah. You'll see. All right. This exhibit right here, I don't know if it's temporary or permanent, but these are the greatest fans of the game, unquote. And then the entrance to Sacred Ground. Look at all this memorabilia. Now I remember 2004 World Series. Of course, I wasn't there, but during the Cards postseason, they used those noise makers, those white things. And this spotlights a lot of different stadiums. Like those are old seats from Philadelphia's Veterans Stadium. And then that's something that was once was part of Forbes Field. Cubs fans, here you go. Big thing about Wrigley Field. I mean, this is definitely something worth seeing in person. I mean, yeah, there's the old mascot. Here's the Hank Aaron exhibit, Chasing the Dream. That's when he broke that home run career record. Yep, this was the locker used by Hank Aaron in 1974 when he was playing for the Atlanta Stadium in 1974. Wow. Some more Hank Aaron memorabilia. That's his Presidential Medal of Freedom, given to him by George W. Bush. And that is a third base on April 8th, 1974 was when he broke that record, when the hammer ran third base and planted his foot on the home plate in Atlanta Stadium. And the third base of this game has been saved as a memento of Aaron's determination to cross 2,145 bases. Pretty cool. This is the Babe Ruth crown he was given. These are all the balls that were used during the countdown to the home run. And here's the section where it talks about the record breakers, and it's kind of awkward that they're displaying Pete Rose's picture and his records on there, because it's always his exclusion into this building has always been controversial, but it can't be forgotten that he has had the most hits in his career of anybody, for that matter. 4,256 home run records. I remember when Mark McGwire hit 70. Of course, that was back when it was a big deal. It does mention about his possibility of using PEDs. The Cardinals are number 2, but the Yankees are number 1 as far as World Series wins. Here's one of those replica World Series trophies. Actually, it's a real thing. It's 1996. I take that back. This was a World Series jacket, 1927. It was worn by pitcher Jesse Haynes in celebration of the 1926 World Series victory. So right now, the most recent World Series champions are the Houston Astros. And of course, this section talks about their magnificent year, or last year I should say. The exhibition talks about cards, sports cards, baseball cards, but also non-sport cards. It's also got some cool evolution. It's got a nice, interesting story about the evolution, about how they became tobacco cards in the 1880s, all the way to what we know as baseball cards. today.
That's what they used to do back in my day. I'm waiting for my
I literally have that baseball card album at home. Yeah, it's weird. Not the one with the Expos or all those teams, but the ones, yeah, that one right there. And this is how I remember buying baseball cards, especially from these. You put in some change or coins and they vend. Ah, the good old days. Yeah, the cards your mother threw away indeed. Well, holy cow. Actually, it literally is a holy cow. And this way to the Hall of Fame gallery, which to most people it's the last part of the tour. And then this is how you get to the Hall of Fame gallery. Straight ahead is the 1936, the first class. You can do it on that side. But it actually starts 1937 and it goes onward. But here are some classic ball players like Cy Young, Tris Speaker, Connie Mack. It stops right here, 2019, 2022 to the present day. Fred McGriff's is going to go right here. Scotty Rolen's is going to be right there. And then, yeah. But here are the most recently enshrined. You had David Ortiz, you had Buck O'Neill.
So how does one get into Cooperstown? Well, in short, they are selected by the Baseball Writers Association of America. A player has to be retired for at least 5 years and have played for at least 10 years in the major leagues. A ballot is usually 25 to 40 players, but whoever gets at least 75% of the vote gets in that year. In later years, a Veterans Committee was added. This was to include players from past eras, among other things. If a player is on the ballot for more than 10 years, they could be inducted through this committee. There is also a subcommittee for the Negro League. Many changes and exceptions to the rules have happened to the induction process in the last 70 or so years. As for the time I'm doing this video, there have been 342 people inducted into the Hall. This includes umpires, and many who have had a lot to do with baseball. This also includes 39 who were part of the Negro Leagues before integration. Of course, any place that calls itself the Hall of Fame is always controversial. Speaking of which, there is also controversy over players who have played for more than one team, and the team logo on their cap engraved on their plaque. A great example is Carlton Fisk, and manager Tony La Russa. Which eligible player do you think should be in?
And this is off of Main Street, where a lot of small businesses are here. And some may even consider this a tourist trap because, yes, just about all these businesses are trying to make money off the tourists, you know, with all these generic shirts and all that. But they have a lot of cool restaurants and ice cream, and again, there's breweries here. So, I mean, if you're into baseball cards or just want to take home a few souvenirs, here, I'll give you an example. Here's one of those shops that has a lot of baseball stuff you can buy. And there's a couple of good baseball card shops, even though my love for the hobby ended about 3 decades ago. But it's definitely a perfect day, you know, to go out shopping in a place like this. And that way is Doubleday Field, which again I'll do a separate episode on. And a couple other things to keep in mind while you're here in Cooperstown. It's not just the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame, but there's also the Farmers Museum. And then there's also the Fenimore Art Museum as well. So is definitely the place to spend one day in. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this great baseball episode of Historically Marked. All right, so I hope I gave you plenty of reasons to come out here. And like I said, the drive is wonderful. You see a lot of New York hills, maybe they're mountains, I don't know. And parking, definitely plan ahead for that because there is very limited parking. You can also pay, or you can take the trolley, which is just right behind me. There is a parking lot like just a little bit outside town if you want to do that. But baseball fans, you gotta come here sometime in your lifetime. And personally, I did not think I would make it here this sooner, but this was on my bucket list. So, all right. Well, I better stop talking. I am Jason in Cooperstown, New York, in front of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Sign off.